Welcome back, friends. James Corbett here, CorbettReport.com. You're tuned into Propaganda Watch, that series where I dissect various tools that are used and deployed against the public for molding public opinion, shaping public discourse, and motivating action in a number of political arenas. And this week on the program, we're going to examine a technique that is subtle, has a number of embedded assumptions and unstated motivations, and is extraordinarily effective for getting people to act in certain ways, or at least to believe certain things about the world that then informs a general viewpoint that motivates particular actions. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the deployment of poll results, surveys, statistics. We've polled a certain number of people, and we've found X. And this, in an unstated way, is supposed to get you to believe that X is true or right or valuable, and therefore to motivate you to act in a certain way. And this can be used in really innocuous ways. It can be used in insidious ways. It can be used in downright deceptive, manipulative, and malevolent ways in order to shape your viewpoint on a given topic. Now, let's look at some examples, going, as I say, from the innocuous to the insidious to the manipulative. And we'll start with one that doesn't seem particularly technique functions. This one is coming from Plaquemine Post South. Poll shows support for funding to research aimed at obesity epidemic. 85% of voters polled believe that the state should spend more public funds on medical research to help reduce obesity among Louisianans. 69% think Louisiana state taxpayer funds should be used to support scientific research at public universities, etc., etc. I'll let you read through that entire article for yourself, but I think you get the gist of what this technique is and how it can be deployed from something as seemingly innocuous as this. Oh, okay, all right. 85% of voters polled believe that the public should spend more public fund, that the state should spend more public funds on medical research to help reduce obesity. Okay, well, good. And that type of headline and that type of story might be the type of thing, I suppose, if anyone actually still reads physical newspapers, you might glance over and read the first couple paragraphs of that and move on. And it might just embed itself in your subconscious. And you might not think about it again. But it might inform the way you think about that issue in the future. And what is the unstated and embedded assumptions here? It's that, first of all, that the state is, its function is to reduce obesity amongst the population, and that it can do this just by spending more money on the problem. It always comes back to funding, of course. And so who's really advocating for this, and in what way, and why, and when was this poll conducted, and why? Oh, it was conducted by Bernie R. Pinsonat, Inc. for the Pennington Biomedical Research Foundation. And oh yeah, it's finding that the majority of Louisiana taxpayers want the Louisiana state government to spend more money on, well, research foundations, like the Pennington Biomedical Research Foundation. So you see how this can be used as essentially a marketing tactic, a sales technique, to get people to say, oh, look, everyone's on board with this idea, so why don't we just pump more money into these biomedical research foundations, and we can reduce obesity that way. How about you just reduce your caloric intake? No. We need to spend billions of dollars. We need research foundations. We need guys in white lab coats and working on some magic pill that's always 15 years down the road. No. I mean, continue to eat your greasy fast food and everything. I mean, that's fine, but just pay more money to the research foundation. Anyway, that's a pretty blatant example of how this game can work. And that's a case where there is a very specific and obvious interest by a specific party in commissioning and conducting a poll in order to get exactly that kind of result. And you imagine the results wouldn't have been released if it had have gone the other way. 85% of Louisianans think there should be no taxes and we shouldn't pay anything, blah, blah, blah. No, that wouldn't get a news headline, but this, they'll run with it. Well, how else can this technique be used? Here's a more, what I would call, insidious way that this technique is used. It's essentially along the lines of, look what your neighbors are doing and saying and thinking and believing. Why aren't you? It's the type of group shaming tactic that I think we can all relate to in our personal lives. People use this in everything, from office scuttlebutt to everything else, to try to group shame people into, oh, everyone else thinks this. Why are you the one holdout? Well, how can this be used in a news, quote-unquote, context? Just ask Fox Business, who ran this headline recently: "What Americans Will and Won't Give Up to Fight Climate Change," where they attempt to tell you the various things that apparently the American public are doing or not doing in order to save the world. Because as we know, it is your personal responsibility. It's your plastic straws that have killed the environment. I mean, don't worry about the DOD and what they're doing. Don't worry about just tampering with the human genome and other things that are going on, the genetic monstrosities that are being created by Bayer Monsanto and all of this. No, don't worry about any of those kinds of environmental issues. It's you and your plastic straws that are, and look what people are doing and not doing. So this one goes on this is a poll by the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research, and it highlights in a simple infographic some of the things that people are doing. For example, under a headline, "Climate versus Convenience," they say 90% of people turn off unused lights. Good job. And if you're one of those 10%, like, what kind of horrible, weird maniac are you? Well, yeah, turn off unused lights. But then where does this go from there? 50% set heater at 68 degrees or lower in winter. Well, you're not one of these people that like to heat your house too warm, are you? Most people, 50% plus one, choose 68 degrees. So that's the magic number. Now, being a non-American, i.e. anyone in the rest of the world, I have no idea what 68 degrees means. That sounds extremely hot to me, but that's because I work in Celsius. 20% take buses or bike instead of driving. Now they're starting to get into the things like, look, there's a growing number of people. There's 20% of real climate crusaders, real good people who are saving the world, who will go that extra step and start biking to work. Why don't you bike to work? And then it gets to 5% always eat vegetarian meals. Because again, as we know, one of the new things that they're coming out with is vegetarianism is healthier for the environment because it will reduce carbon dioxide. That's why you should be vegetarian. And look, 5% of people are doing it, but it's only 5%. We can do better. It's trying to shame people, guilt people into doing things by showing, look at what your neighbors are doing or thinking. And that starts to get into insane territory, as we've seen in the last several years. Well, I mean, this is obviously an old tactic, but I've certainly noticed it in my time at the Corporate Report when it comes to things like airport security, where I've talked about this before, I believe, on Propaganda Watch. At least I did talk about it, I think, earlier this year. Talking about those situations in which they'll go to the airport to, there's the new, X-ray naked body scanners, and they'll interview people in line. What do you think about the new airport scanners? And on the news, they'll show everyone saying, it's inconvenient, but we've got to do it in order to combat terrorism or something. They'll show 3 or 4 people saying that. And the impression that you get, again, it's the unstated, embedded assumptions, but you see 3 or 4 people answering in a little tightly made news package for the TV, the 6 o'clock news. So while you're eating your dinner, your TV dinner, vegetating with your family, you can get this indoctrination that, oh, look, they interviewed 3 people and all 3 said that the airport scanners are good. But they don't show you the 57 people that they talked to that said, this is insane, this is ridiculous, I hate this, why are we doing this is stupid, this is security theater. They'll never show that. And here's another example of that I dug up for this particular Propaganda Watch. CBS News from back in November 2010, when all of the naked airport body scanner brouhaha was coming to a head, and you were starting to get the opt-out day, where everyone was going to opt out of the airport scanners on one of those crush days before Thanksgiving. Everyone's flying, and there was going to be the national opt-out day, and people were getting ready, and so they turned off the scanners and let everyone through for that day, because they don't want you to, this is exactly the tactic in reverse. They want you to think everybody else is happy with what's going on, you're the weird one for not liking it. If they allow you a demonstration where, hey, Look, I'm not the only one. In fact, all of us are against it. You're the crazy ones for trying to make us do this. They'll never give you a fair playing field to demonstrate that, because that's precisely what they don't want. Instead, they'll come out with garbage like this. Poll, 4 in 5 support full-body airport scanners. And there's the CBS News poll analysis by the CBS News polling unit, where they show that 81% say that airports should use full-body X-ray machines. 15% say no, and 4% say don't know /other. So, again, and that's just the big infographic they use to start this story, so that even if you don't even read the article, you get it right away. 81% of people are fine with these full-body X-ray machines. Why aren't you? What's wrong with you? Maybe you're the terrorist, huh? Which, again, is the way that this is used. It's group peer pressure. And again, this is the oldest tactic in human society, peer pressure. But here it is in the news context. Oh, we commissioned this poll and we found everybody loves the airport scanners, so you're the crazy one. Now, sometimes this kind of backfires and it kind of shows the exact opposite of what the central narrative would be. And a good example of that I know I've referred to on the podcast before. I'm afraid I can't dig out the specific reference. This was several years ago. But I did talk about how isn't it funny that every single year in the JFK assassination anniversary coverage, or whenever there's a big new special on the CBS News, and whoever the Walter Cronkite of today is hosting some serious special about what we know about this crazy lone nut Lee Harvey Oswald, who undoubtedly assassinated the president. It's not even mentioned. The idea is not even countenanced. It doesn't even deserve a mention that, oh yeah, I guess some people believe that he wasn't the lone nut that killed the president all by himself. But it isn't even brought up to dismiss, generally. It's generally just assumed that everyone knows and everyone believes 100% in the Bible that is the Warren Commission report. No one has any questions about that. And yet, of course, that is the exact opposite of reality. I've pointed this out before, but here's a more recent example than ones I've pointed out before. Here's from October 2017, back when there was the JFK assassination records dump, or lack thereof, and that was making some news headlines. This came out from 538, which we know got the 2016 election, so right? 538. Most people believe in JFK conspiracy theories. Perhaps no major event in modern U.S. history has spawned more widespread doubt than the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas in November 1963. The official account, one man, Lee Harvey Oswald, did it. The unofficial theory, well, there are many, blah, blah, blah. And it says, according to a new 538 Commission Survey Monkey poll of 5,130 adults conducted October 17th to October 20th, 2017, only 33% of Americans believe that one man was responsible for the assassination. A majority, 61%, think that others were involved in a conspiracy. In pretty much every demographic, most respondents believed that Oswald didn't act alone. The majority of people, hey, it's a democracy, people, and the 50% plus one gets to rule, right? But on cases like this, where the majority of people see the self-evident fraud, the self-evident contradiction, tissue of lies that is the official story, the Warren Commission report, and its defenders, in these cases, that isn't even countenanced. That this will be occasionally discovered and even publicized sometimes. The majority of Americans don't believe this. But it will not even be thoroughly discussed. It certainly won't be taken seriously. It will never actually seriously be discussed and investigated, and they'll never have a serious researcher on to talk about this in anything approaching a serious manner in any sort of mainstream media outlet. Of course. Why would they even broach the topic? Because to even broach the topic is to let people out there know that I'm not the only one. I'm not the crazy one. Oh, look, there are other people. Oh, wait, the majority of people. Hey, my neighbors think this too. I didn't know, because this is one of those subjects you're supposed to shut up about and be quiet because you're the crazy one. Again, this is how the group peer pressure works, and this is why they don't widely publicize and trumpet results like these that show that most people don't buy the official propaganda. Now this, as always, as we've talked about several times here on Propaganda Watch over the course of the past year, this, as always, raises the conundrum. Well, this is a technique for getting people for persuading people in various ways. Can it be used for good? Could we then trumpet results like this one. Look, the majority of people know that Oswald didn't act alone. Could we use this to say, hey, look, if you think that Oswald acted alone, you're the nutty one. You're the Fruit Loop. You're out there. You're the wingnut. You're the fringe theorist who thinks that it was Oswald acting alone. Well, I mean, there may be some validity to that, and here's an interesting example of that phenomenon. This one by way of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, AE 9/11 Truth. You may have seen this around the time of the anniversary and its coverage this year, but if not, here it is. Most Americans who see collapse of Building 7 doubt official story, survey finds. And this says a solid majority of Americans who watched the September 11, 2001 collapse of World Trade Center Building 7 on video don't buy the government's story that fires brought it down, according to a new survey conducted by YouGov on behalf of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. Which I'm sure the Metabunk kind of crowd would instantly go, oh, yeah, but of course, it was commissioned by 9/11 Truth. Of course, they're going to find what they're going to find. But this is just playing the game by the exact same rules that always pertains in the mainstream media. Oh, the Pennington Biomedical Research Foundation sponsored this poll that found the majority of taxpayers want the state to spend more money on our research. Well, imagine that. I mean, this is the exact same thing. So if you're going to criticize this, okay, but you're going to have to criticize all of them. And then the question really is, well, what is YouGov and how do they conduct these polls and in what manner? And is anything excluded from this? Did they do 7 versions of this poll and this is the only one that found this result, so they went with that? I mean, those are questions about methodology, but those questions have real answers. And you have to start digging into that. So that's why this type of poll will just be completely ignored. But continuing with the story, after viewing video footage of the controversial building collapse from 4 different angles, 52% of Americans who participated in the survey are either sure or suspect it was caused by controlled demolition, compared to 21% who are sure or suspect it was caused by ordinary fires. A sizable 27% say they don't know. Okay, this is important, and this is interesting because it is playing the game by the exact same rules that the mainstream media uses all the time to tell us that 4 in 5 people support invasive naked X-ray body scanners that are probably giving you cancer. So why don't you? It's the exact same thing in the exact same style, commissioned in the same way, run by the same types of organizations. So this is flipping the tables and saying, look, we can do it too. Look, the majority of people see that this is not an ordinary building collapse. So what are you going to do? And then, of course, the response is going to be, well, yes, but the majority of people are not structural engineers, and so they don't know what they're seeing, and they know nothing about the details of this. Okay, fair enough, but then why do you always put up polls about the majority of Swedish people believe that humans are 100% responsible for global warming, whatever that we define that as this week? Well, again, are the general population of Sweden all scientific experts impaneled by the IPCC? No, of course not. So why do we care about the majority of people's opinion on the scientific subject like that? Well, then why do we care about the majority of people's opinion about what they see with their own eyes regarding Building 7? They're not experts. How could they possibly know? So again, this gets into a whole different field of expertology, which we will talk about in the future. But this is an interesting idea, and it raises, again, as we've talked about before here, these are techniques for persuading people on various subjects. So the question is, well, can we turn the tables? Can we use this type of thing to flip the narrative, as it were, and to say, you're the kooky wingnut because you believe the official story of 9/11. Because it's true, most people doubt. And this has been found in polls over the years. But again, those polls are dismissed. They're swept under the rug. The polls that show the propaganda narrative are trumpeted loud and blared on the nightly news. And all of this is just background chatter to most people. People don't live their lives by what the latest poll says. But it does go into people's subconscious. And they subconsciously register that in a way. 85% of Louisianans want to spend more money on the Pennington Biomedical Research Foundation. Okay, I guess that's an important issue. I guess we should rally around that. It's an interesting technique because it is so subtle in some ways. It operates subtly. It's in your face, but it operates subtly and mostly subconsciously. And it raises some interesting questions. So I'd love to hear your guys' take on this. That's going to do it for this edition of Propaganda Watch. All the links, of course, to all of these stories will be in the show notes at CorbettReport.com, so I hope you'll check it out. James Corbett, CorbettReport.com.
The Corbett Report is brought to you by you. Your support makes the Corbett Report possible. Sign up for the subscriber newsletter or purchase a DVD at corbettreport.com/support.